Alright, so far we have made some really good progress. We managed to show our fruits. We gave it a random picture using the fruits pictures that we have downloaded, and also we managed to give it a random position horizontally, and we gave it a top position as well. Okay, random. Now we are ready to start moving our fruit down. So to do that, we will need to define a random step. The reason why is moving the fruit down means that we're going to move the fruit down by one step every 10 milliseconds, for example. And if we have a fixed step, then all the fruits are going to move down the same speed. So if we go for a random step, then all the fruits are going to have different speeds. So the next step here is to generate a random step. So we're going to go for a step between 1 pixel and 6 pixels, for example. So we're going to need to generate a random number using the math.random method. Okay, so we're going to need to use a variable here, step, that we are going to define at the beginning of our code. So this is going to return a number between 0 and 1. If we multiply that by 5, then we're getting a number between 0 and 5. And to get a round number, we place this inside the math.round method. And now we're getting a round number. But we don't want numbers between, we don't want a number equal to 0. So we want at least 1. So we're going to add 1 to the final result. And now we're getting a step between 1 and 6. And this is going to be changing this step. All right. Now we want to move the fruit down by one step every 10 milliseconds, for instance. So we're going to use the function setInterval. So rather than moving it down every 30 milliseconds, I'm going to go for 10 milliseconds. You can change that if you want. So we're going to use a variable action for this. And we're going to set it to the output of the setInterval function. So again, the setInterval function is going to take a couple of parameters. The first parameter is the function to execute. And the second parameter is the duration in milliseconds. So we want to execute this every 10 milliseconds, so that's going to be 10. All right. We will need to define this variable action at the beginning of the code as well. And it's used for the setInterval function. Now we are going to move the fruits down by one step. So to do this, we are going to access the top property of our fruit. So first we're going to access the fruit using its ID, and then we're going to use the CSS method, which will take a couple of parameters. So the first one is going to be top, and the second parameter is going to be the new value of our top property. So the new value is going to be the original value of the top property, and to access that, we're going to access the element using its ID. And then we're going to use a method position, which will return an object. And this object has got one of its properties is top. And this is returning the original top position of our element. So we want the top element or the top property to be set to the original value plus step. So if we save this and start the game, then we can see that our fruit is going down. So it goes down by 1 step every 10 milliseconds. Now let's go back to our code structure and see what comes next. So every time we move the fruit down, we are going to check if the fruit is too low. So the fruit is too low if the top position of our fruit is greater than the height of our fruits container. So now we are going to check if the fruit is too low. So to do that, we're going to check if the top position or the top property of our fruit, which is this. So we'll check if that's greater than the height of our container. And to access that, we're going to access our fruits container using its ID. And we'll use the method height, which returns the height of the element. Now we are going to check if we have any trials left. Before doing that, let's just go back to our code and make sure that everything is readable. So we start sending fruits here using the start action function. Okay, so first of all, we are generating a fruit, which means that we are showing the fruits. We are choosing a random picture, and also we are setting the random position. And then we are generating a random step, and we start moving the fruit down by 1 step every 10 milliseconds. So first, we move the fruit down by 1 step. Let's put the comment there. And then we check if the fruit is too low. Okay, if the fruit is too low, then we are going to check if we have any trials left. If it's not too low, meaning the answer is no, then we are repeating number 2, and that's going to happen automatically because we are inside the setInterval function. So if this condition is not verified, we are just going to go back to the beginning and move the fruit by 1 step again, and we continue like that. So now we are going to check if we have any trials left. If we have any trials left, then we are going to repeat number 1, which means creating a random fruit. Otherwise, we're going to show game over. So we're going to check if we have any trials left. So if we go to the final game, we'll see that once we miss a fruit, if we have trials left, then we generate another fruit and reduce the trials by 1. Otherwise, if we have no trials left, then it's game over. So if we have trials left, which means that the trials left variable is greater than 1. That's because once we have only one trial left, it includes the current one. And that's when we get game over. So if the trials left are strictly greater than 1, which means that we've got 2 trials left, including the current one, or 3 trials left, then we're going to generate a new fruit, which means we are getting a new picture and also generating a new position and getting a new step. And that's going to be all this piece of code. Otherwise, if we have no trials left, that's going to be else, and that's going to be game over, because we have no trials left. Okay, so let's go back to when we still have trials left. So once we generate a new fruit, our trials go down by 1. And also, we remove 1 little heart from our trials box. So, to do that, first of all, we are going to reduce the number of trials by 1, which means that we're accessing the trials left variable, and we're reducing that by 1. And then we are going to use the function add hearts, which will just populate our trials left box with the right number of hearts. And it's going to be populate trials left box. If we have a look at our add hearts function, we will see that the function is only appending images to the trials left box, which means that if we have 2 trials left and we have 3 hearts there, then we're going to be adding another 2 hearts. And that's not exactly what we want. So every time we run this function, we will need to empty our box first before adding these hearts. So to do that, we're going to add another statement just before going inside the for loop to empty our trials left box. So we're going to access the box using its ID. And then we are going to use a method called empty. So this method will empty any HTML elements if it's applied to it. Now let's move to the else statement, which corresponds to game over. So inside our code structure, we're saying here that if we have no trials left, then we show the game over message, and we change the button text to start game. So let's have a look at this. So when the game is over, we can see that the game over message shows up, the button changes to start game, and also we are going to hide the trials left box. Additionally, we are going to set our playing variable to false as we are not playing anymore. So let's go inside the else statement and do all this. So first of all, we are going to set the variable playing to false as we are not playing anymore. Also, we are going to change the text of our start reset button to start game using the HTML method. Okay, and also we are going to show the game over message. So to do that, we are going to use the method show. So it access the div using its ID, which is game over, and we'll use the method show. And also we're going to change the HTML of the game over div to these 2 paragraphs. So again, we're going to access the div using its ID, and this time we'll use the HTML method, and we are going to place a couple of paragraphs there. So the first one is going to be game over. So in the CSS file, we are using the transform to uppercase for this, so we don't worry about the uppercase, okay, because it's already styled in the CSS file. So the second paragraph is going to say your score is whatever the score is. So we're gonna cut the string here, and we are going to use the variable score there. And very important, we will need to stop the setInterval function. So we're going to use the function clearInterval that we are going to apply to this variable action. As we don't need to drop our fruits anymore. So as we don't need to move down our fruits anymore. So just to make our code readable, we're going to use a function for this. So we're going to call it stop action. So let's define this function at the end using the function keyword. So we're going to use the function clearInterval applied to the variable action. And also we need to hide our fruit using the hide method. Let's add a comment before the function saying stop dropping fruits. Okay, let's save our code and start the game and make sure that our code is working. So that's the first fruit we miss, that's another miss, and that's another miss, and now it's game over. Our score is kept as 0 because we haven't sliced any fruits and we haven't written code that needs to be executed when we slice a fruit. Okay. One detail here, once the game is over, we want to hide this trials left box. So we're going to add an extra statement just before stopping the action. So we're going to access the box using its ID. And we'll use the function hide to hide it. So let's try again. All right, and now our box is hidden. Now, if we start the game again, you will notice that the game over box is still there. So to avoid this, we're going to go back to the code that we've written for starting the game. And we'll add one step there, which is to hide the game over box. And to do that, we're going to access the div using its ID, which is game over, and we'll use the method hide. And now if we try and we launch the game again, now the game over box disappears.